Welcome to the Explainer. So, today we're actually tackling something a bit different. We aren't just looking at some simple, everyday children's story. No, we are exploring a profoundly deep narrative packed with some really beautiful poetic truths. Actually, quick side note, I use Notebook LM to help synthesize all the source material for this explainer. It's a real game changer, and if you want to try it out yourself, just head over to notebooklm.google/notebook/creating. All right, let's get into it. Together, we're unpacking the classic tale of Hansel and Gretel. It's a story of betrayal, unbelievable resilience, and ultimately hope. And as we'll see, this narrative resonates way, way beyond the nursery. Okay, let's just dive right in by confronting a truly heartbreaking reality. I mean, think about it. What actually happens when the very people meant to protect you are the ones who put you in danger? In our source material, we meet this poverty-stricken father. He's working day and night as a woodcutter, just trying to keep his family afloat. But he ultimately yields to his new wife's incredibly cruel plan. His new wife, the stepmother, is completely cold and calculating. She decides that to survive a worsening food shortage, they literally have to abandon the children in the dense forest. Unthinkable, right? Section 1. Betrayal by loved ones. A home unsafe.
This dynamic brilliantly illustrates the tragedy at play here. It's just such a stark contrast. On one side, the children have this beautiful memory of their real mother. She was a source of just absolute love, and her absence has left this massive, aching void in their lives. But then, on the other side, you've got the stepmother. She's cold, she's calculating, constantly looking out the window, just consumed with resentment and actively devising ways to get rid of them. It's heartbreaking because that warm memory of love is completely overshadowed by a very real, very present cruelty.
So as the children are led into the woods for the very first time, under the guise of a totally innocent walk, mind you, the source text hits us with this absolutely stunning piece of poetry. Autumn's cold winds taught us that not everyone who is ours remains ours. I mean, wow. Just take a second to really think about that. The beautiful falling leaves of that autumn setting, they perfectly mirror the stepmother's utter coldness. Just like the seasons changing, the children are being forced into this incredibly painful realization about changing loyalties. They're realizing the people they completely relied on are literally abandoning them to the approaching freezing winter of the forest.
Section 2. Lost in the forest, fending for themselves.
Now, you really have to admire Hansel's survival tactics here. The first time around, he cleverly gathers these white pebbles the night before. When they get abandoned, he quietly drops them along the path, and later, the moonlight beautifully reflects off them, guiding the kids right back home. It's a huge success, but the stepmother catches on. She learns from this and literally locks their door the next time. So, strategy 2. Hansel is forced to improvise with breadcrumbs. He is just as clever, sure, but this time nature itself intervenes. The birds swoop down and eat their path home, completely trapping them. And that brings us to another beautifully, agonizingly tragic line from the narrative: the hands held for a lifetime let go halfway. It just so perfectly captures the pure devastation of that specific moment. Their parents tell them to just wait by the fire, promising they'll be back soon. But as noon drags into evening, the horrifying truth sets in. The very hands that were supposed to guide these kids through life have just dropped theirs, right in the middle of a dark, terrifying forest, leaving them completely, utterly alone. When you track these events day by day, it builds this feeling of just absolute despair. Day 1, they're abandoned, but they manage to use the pebbles to get back. Day 2, they face the cruel reality of being locked in their own room, actively prevented from trying to save themselves. By day 3, the breadcrumbs fail them completely. And then by day X, they're just wandering for hours, hopelessly lost, starving, exhausted. It's this agonizing, slow burn of rejection that tests literally every single ounce of their endurance. Section 3. Sweet house, bitter truth. A deceptive trap. Okay, the contrast here is just wild. The exterior of the house they stumble upon, it is literally a dream come true for starving kids. We're talking walls built of biscuits, roofs made of sweets, windows crafted out of colorful chocolate and cream. But the interior? Once they're actually invited inside by this seemingly sweet, kind old woman, it is unbelievably dirty, dark, and terrifying. But the poor kids are just way too exhausted and starving to even notice the nightmare they've just walked right into. The source explicitly hands us this really profound takeaway here. Not all that glitters brings happiness and peace. I really want you to remember this because it's so unbelievably relevant to our own lives today. Just like in this story, appearances can be incredibly deceiving, right? Sometimes the things that look the absolute most appealing, the most perfect on the outside, they hide the darkest, ugliest realities on the inside.
Section 4. Fear and bravery. Facing the nightmare.
So let's break down the sheer terror of this trap. That kind old woman, yeah, she drops the facade immediately and reveals herself to be a horrific witch. She grabs Hansel and shoves him into a cold iron cage with one singular, totally gruesome goal: to fatten him up. Meanwhile, Gretel is dragged into this filthy kitchen and forced into literal slavery. She's ordered to cook these massive, heavy meals for her brother while she herself starves. Talk about out of the frying pan and into the fire, right? The children treated the dangers of the forest for the absolute horror of the witch's house. But you have to look at Hansel's quiet rebellion in the middle of all this. This is pure strategic resilience. Even while he's literally trapped in a cage, knowing exactly what the witch is planning, he absolutely refuses to give up hope. Every single time the witch goes to sleep, Hansel takes the food Gretel brings him and secretly buries it in the dirt. He intentionally starves himself to stay thin and delay her gruesome plan, cleverly buying them some incredibly precious time. And then comes the turning point. And honestly, it is incredible. The witch gets impatient. She realizes Hansel just isn't getting fatter. So she decides, you know what? I'm cooking him anyway. She orders Gretel to check if the oven is hot enough. But watch this sequence of events. First, Gretel stops crying and completely gathers her courage. 2, in this massive burst of energy, she shoves the wicked witch right into the blazing hot oven. 3, she doesn't even freeze up. She immediately grabs a nearby hammer. And 4, she rushes right over and just smashes the lock on Hansel's cage. In literally a matter of seconds, Gretel transforms from this terrified, trembling victim into an absolute hero. I really want to pause on this specific quote from the source material. Sometimes life puts humans through such harsh tests that even frightened children become brave when the time comes. That is such a profound lesson. You see, bravery isn't the absence of fear. Gretel was absolutely terrified. But true bravery is the action you take in spite of that fear. It's stepping up and finding that inner strength when life demands it the most.
Section 5. Victory and Homecoming. Reclaiming the Future.
So, mapping out the aftermath. During their escape, Hansel suddenly remembers this room full of treasure they'd spotted earlier. They stuff a whole sack with the witch's hidden gold and flee the rapidly burning house. A bit later, they finally find a moment of peace, just resting by a canal in the golden light of the setting sun. But what's really touching here, and you can't miss this, is that even with a literal sack full of gold sitting right next to them, as they sit there drinking water, their deepest craving isn't for wealth at all. It's just a desperate yearning for the genuine comfort and love of their real mother. As they finally start making their way back toward their village, the narrative delivers this beautiful, poetic stanza. This is the way of life. Victory comes only after defeat. It speaks so perfectly to how life is this crazy mix of sorrow and shade, tears and laughter. It just entirely encapsulates their whole agonizing journey through those dark woods, culminating in this massive, hard-won triumph.
At long last, they find their way home, and they are greeted by an immensely apologetic father who has finally realized his terrible, terrible mistake. He tells them the cruel stepmother has actually left the house for good, and when the kids show him the gold they brought back, he just looks at them and says, "You returning to me is my greatest treasure." It's this incredibly beautiful realization that family, not gold, not sweets, is your true wealth.
And that brilliantly brings us to our final question for you. When life abandons you in a dark forest, how will you find your way out? Whether you're gathering pebbles to retrace your steps, burying your burdens just to buy some time, or finding the absolute courage to push back against the fire, I really hope you carry Hansel and Gretel's unbelievable resilience with you. Thank you so much for exploring this with me.